Hey gang, I know we're all looking to take our B2B marketing strategy to the next level. And so that's why, whether you're selling enterprise software or you're a niche B2B service provider, I picked out these 5 books, which you probably haven't been recommended before, that I think will give you some fresh insights and practical frameworks to better connect with your audience, close more deals, and then ultimately grow your business and revenue. Marketing for B2B is often overwhelming. There's just so much complexity and so many different touch points involved in the decision-making process. But today, I want to share these 5 powerful books that I think will simplify things for you, offer strategies that you probably haven't encountered before. So let's jump into these 5 book recommendations. All right, book number 1, Invisible Influence by Jonah Berger. Invisible Influence is really all about those subtle social forces and impacts decision-making. For B2B marketers, this is ultimately critical. Knowing how peers and trends and these small cues influence the buyers can help you craft a better campaign, a more compelling campaign. So here's just a couple of key takeaways that I got from this book. Number 1, and this is something that I don't question, but I think a lot of people don't think about enough, and that's just people are influenced by others far more than they realize, whether you're thinking about yourself being influenced. Number 2, the context in which choices are presented can change that perception. So this is going to get into how we kind of wrap the messages that we're putting forward, whether it's in an email, on our website, and those sorts of things. So presentation matters. And then number 3, just small environmental tweaks can shift decision making. You'll see this all the time on websites. You'll make some small minor tweak and all of a sudden the conversion rate will go up significantly. So what do you do with this particular book and the information in it? I think it's important that you start leveraging social proof in your marketing. You need to use case studies, industry benchmarks, and testimonials in order to align with those social and professional validations that your buyers are seeking or your buyers are influenced by. And again, this can be public data, this can be research that's published within the industry, as well as data that you're collecting within your own organization. Book 2, Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. This particular one I think is really important in the context of B2B, where complex jargon can really muddle your message. Particularly as an insider, we often alienate, even though we're inside of the industry, we alienate the people that we're talking to because we're using insider jargon, either to our product and services, or maybe even within the industry that's a little bit too nuanced. So in building a story brand, it really helps to clarify that value proposition by framing it in more simple and compelling stories or language. So a couple key takeaways within this book. Number 1, you want to position the customer as the hero and the product as the guide along the way. Too often we position our product as the hero, telling all the wonderful things that it will do for them, and essentially we're taking our stakeholder, our prospect, our customer, and putting them on the sideline to watch the story instead of pulling them in as the hero. We also want to simplify the message to reduce confusion. Again, oftentimes we know all of the nuance. I know I'm super guilty of this. I tend to want to get in a lot of detail because I want that person to understand all of the nuance to the level of detail that I do. And often that's not necessary. And it can either be confusing or even make your prospect or your customer feel inferior or uncomfortable or anxiety over that conversation because they feel more ignorant or at a disadvantage to you. So simplicity is super important. And then number 3, creating an emotional connection through storytelling. A good storyteller will be able to lead people through, draw them in, and make them a part of that story in an emotional way where that relationship will be stronger based on not only trust, but also that competency that a story sort of brings together for the person that you're talking to. And then, of course, how to implement this. I think it's probably important to take a look at your website. You're probably going to need to rewrite it, particularly your sales collateral. I can guarantee you that your sales collateral, when you pull it out, you look at those PDFs, they are definitely written from your perspective, and they're all about you instead of putting that customer in the center of the story as the hero. You want to be less focused on the products and the features and more on how it's solving that customer's problem. Turn your customer ultimately into the hero of the story is going to be the way that you're going to be better framing and create a more compelling message to those customers with this book. Book number 3, Hooked teaches you how to create habit-forming products, but its principles also apply to B2B marketing. By creating engaging content and experiences, you can nurture ongoing relationships and your prospects. By seeing you over and over again in the context as an expert, you will create that same kind of habit-forming relationship with you and your content and your messaging and your expertise as a product would. So here's how I would reframe this a little bit in the context of B2B marketing with these 3 takeaways. 1, think about the hook model itself. Trigger, action, reward, and investment. As you're building out messages, you want to think about what's triggering me to deliver this message, what action do I want them to take, what reward will they gain from it, and then ultimately what's required of them, what investment will they need to make, and how do we make that seem more comfortable. Number 2, variable rewards can drive ongoing engagement. So as you go along the way, having different rewards throughout that message, or as you're building that storyline, I see this all the time and I like to use it inside of email sequences. Instead of just hammering somebody with 5 emails, I like to build somewhat of a storyline. I want to start with obviously a compelling value proposition. And then the second one, I want to build on that story, build more credibility, maybe add some value, add some reward to it. That third email, deepen that maybe support to the argument that I made in the first email and continue to add value. So as I get through those 5 emails, I'm increasing the reward and the benefit to that person actually reading all 5 of those emails, or stopping at one intermittently and getting on a call with me so that they can get the rest of that reward in the form of a demo or discovery with me. Book number 4, This is Marketing by Seth Godin. So most city marketer, you're probably well versed in Seth Godin and several of his books. This is one of his more recent, and I think it's kind of interesting because in This is Marketing, it essentially focuses on building long-term relationships instead of just chasing those quarterly targets. And this is going to be difficult because most of those quarterly targets are imposed upon us. But ultimately, this is, and particularly in the context of B2B marketing, a game of value and trust. And this is what Seth Godin is always hammering in all of his books and his blog. So a couple key takeaways from this one. 1, we want to focus on the specific niche and deeply understand your market. Being an expert in your customer's business is always a significant advantage in both your marketing and your sales approach. Number 2, we want to create marketing that feels meaningful and valuable and not just a transactional exchange. So again, in email is the best sort of example of how to kind of see this most often played out. Again, a lot of times we're bouncing emails into our customers and we're asking them for time, or we're pestering them, or we're bumping it. We're doing the bump up. We're asking them if they saw the message and those sorts of things, almost in a pestering sense. So we need to think about how to make each one of those messages meaningful. And I talked about it in the previous books as kind of an example. How do we take those email marketing messages and turn them into a story, building value, building intrigue, actually getting our customer to want to read the next one, or again, transition onto a meeting with me so that they can get the rest of that value. I think again, Seth Godin reinforces that proposition of driving and creating meaningful and valuable marketing messages. Number 3, we want to build trust through permission-based marketing, all the way back to Seth Godin's very first book, at least that I can remember, about permission-based marketing. He's a big proponent of this. And so again, thinking about that email list and how well you protect it, one of the things that he said in one of his previous books is that he always liked to build an audience or a list and then figure out what to sell them, and not the opposite, where I'm actually trying to sell them and I'm just kind of shoving it down the throats of some random people with email. So this permission-based marketing resurges itself inside of this book, and I think it's something as B2B marketers we need to think deeply about, because too often we're just sort of harvesting lists and pounding on them with email instead of actually getting their permission to engage them and give them something valuable and go beyond that transactional style. So how do we implement? I've talked about a couple of different ways here, but I think most importantly, to kind of bring it down to something more succinct, refocus your marketing efforts on building trust with a specific niche, an industry, or a specific aspect of the business that your customer's in. And then instead of cold outreach, develop this content-driven, permission-based email strategy that will engage prospects over time. So engaging with content, drawing them into the story, and actually getting them to give you permission to continue to market through them through email and other means. Book number 5, The One-Page Marketing Plan by Alan Dibb. This is, again, one of these principles. It's a really quick read, and I've just used it as just kind of a framework over time. Whether I'm presenting to a customer or I'm trying to think through something, I'm always trying to whittle my plan, my campaign structure down as close to one page as possible. So in the B2B space in particular, again, I mentioned before, complexity always overwhelms, and it's really easy to get in the way of our execution. So we're thinking about all the different steps, or we're actually layering complexity upon complexity upon complexity and never really getting started. The one-page marketing plan really helps to break down your strategy into the most simple and actionable steps. So here's some key takeaways from this particular book. 1, segment your plan into before, during, and after the sale. So again, busting it down into small component parts. You can be working on the before while you're getting towards the doing and the sale, right? So there are some things that you can bite off incrementally in small chunks instead of having to sort of boil the whole ocean, as I like to say. Number 2, focus on identifying and reaching your ideal customer. The more time you spend on really understanding and building out those personas, the more clear your plan will be, and it'll drive simplicity because you're thinking about very specific customer profiles and a one-to-one message whenever possible. Number 3, constantly measure and optimize your efforts. So once you have this small, simple plan, you should also have just as much simplicity in your measurements and your metrics, right? So if I'm trying to generate leads, I'm going to look at traffic, my conversion rate, and then ultimately the quality of the leads. I can keep those 3 simple KPIs, and I can do a lot of work to optimize my campaign. So inside of that marketing plan, I can reduce it to 1 page because even my metrics are simple. So how to implement? Create a 1-page marketing plan that maps your customer's journey from lead generation to nurturing and closing. This ensures that every team member knows the strategy and can execute on it. The 1 page makes it really simple because everyone will be able to read that, consume it, and be on the same literal page. If you build out a book or something that's 20 pages long, there's a good percentage of the folks in your organization that are probably contributing to a particular marketing strategy that will never read it and certainly won't read it completely and understand. So condensing that down to 1 page will definitely get you 100% clarity and understanding across the organization as you're trying to execute that marketing plan. So these 5 books are packed with insights specifically for B2B marketers, helping you to simplify the complexity of what we do and create meaningful long-term strategies. Which one of these are you going to dive into? Which one resonated with you the most? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that bell for more B2B marketing tips and book recommendations.